Brian Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you, the Morning Majority. 105.9 FM. AM 630. WMAL.
6:37 on WMAL. Brian Neiman, Mary Catherine Ham in today. Brian Wilson's off, starting the Christmas holiday a little early. Lanny Davis joins us. Happy Hanukkah, Lanny.
Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. I'm ecumenical. We have Christmas trees at my mother-in-law's house and Hanukkah candles at my house, and my kids get presents from both houses.
Is that right? Wow. It's
nice haul for them.
It's going to be a Davis kid, that's for sure. By the way, there was some stink up. Some people took exception to the fact that the president, lit the menorah 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, and did it all one. That's no big deal, right?
I think it's a big deal that he has a beautiful Christmas tree and lights a menorah, and together it's what a president ought to do.
Yeah, all right. Well, we'll leave it at that. So I'm sure that you're very happy right now. It seems to me a lot of Democrats are gleeful a couple of days before Christmas. Man, Chuck Schumer had a big smile on his face yesterday, believing that the Republicans have completely screwed up this payroll tax extension. Have they backed themselves into a corner, into a blind alley, as the White House press secretary said yesterday?
Well, I used to believe that there was no Santa Claus, but I actually now believe in Santa Claus. Santa Claus has brought us the Democratic Party as the party of tax cuts, the Republican Party as the party of increasing taxes, and the Wall Street Journal as the favorite newspaper of the Democratic Party. Thank you. There really is a Santa Claus.
That's more than Santa Claus. That's a miracle, my friend. That's divine intervention.
Look, I don't want to be too smug or confident, because I think we can lose this election, and Barack Obama, as much as I've supported most of his policies, not all, I certainly think that he is in danger of losing an election unless the economy comes back and he steps up to the line on the issue of the national debt. He's been on the sidelines, and he's proven you can be on the sidelines and let the other party commit suicide, and so far that's worked. But I think once the Republicans have a nominee and have a voice, the American people are going to compare that nominee to the situation in the country, and if the economy improves, Barack Obama is going to be our next president. If it doesn't improve, and the Republicans can recapture the middle of the road, and that doesn't mean just calling for tax cuts. That means funding some of the programs that the country desperately needs to repair its infrastructure and create jobs. I think Barack Obama is going to have a contest.
All right, but Republicans say, and I want to get your take on this, they say, look, we passed a bill in the House that extended the payroll tax extension for another year, and the Senate has their bill. I mean, let's do what we always do, and they'll go to conference and work it out. There's still time to do it before the end of the year. I mean, what's wrong with that thinking from House Republicans? They're right on that.
Well, I guess I want to quote John McCain on that. There are 87 senators who voted for a bill. That type of overwhelming bipartisan bill in this country's history doesn't have much of a conference, especially if the minority leader walks out of the deal and says that Speaker Boehner says, okay, so there's a disconnect here. I don't think there's anything wrong in having a conference, and I think the pipeline is something that I strongly support. But linking the two together when you're on a focus of tax cuts is probably politically not a good thing to do, but I think that there's nothing wrong with trying to do it. At this point, they lost the politics because their own party in the Senate went against them.
Do you think if the impasse holds, if the standoff stays how it is right now, does Barack Obama stick around? He said, well, we can't leave until we do this. We will stick around through Christmas. Or does he fly to Hawaii, and does that become a problem for him if he pieces out?
You know, I didn't think it was good optics for him to go to Asia in the middle of the super committee, because I've been so fixed on Simpson Bowls and national debt. Every time I'm on, I mention it to you. So this is probably about optics and about symbolism, and President Obama being in the White House ordering pizza isn't exactly in the middle of the fray, but they've been smart politically. They really allowed, it isn't even the Republican Party, it's a faction of the House Republicans. It's unfair to talk about the whole Republican Party, because until they have a nominee, they don't have a voice. That's always the case in opposition parties. But there's a faction in the House that really is, if I can use a fancy word, nihilist, meaning no real concern about political perceptions, about the politics and the polling, which is all against them. They're just there, and they really don't care. And they're bringing down, I think, the Republican Party as a label, and they're hurting the future Republican nominee. I have one idea for whoever the nominee is going to be. Either Gingrich or Romney looks like the only two that are possible, and that is they distance themselves from this faction of the House Republican caucus the way that John McCain did. And it's one way to stamp yourself as a maverick is to triangulate. That's what Bill Clinton did very well.
Because John McCain did so well for the Republicans in 2008. Yeah. All right, but here's what I want to get from you, though, Lanny. You talk about Simpson Bowles, and you say, hey, the debt is a big problem, and, good for you. I'm happy to hear you say that over the years. But what you're looking for isn't really any different from what these House Republicans want, and that is to make sure things are paid for, and they also want to cut from the budget because they see the debt as a problem. And I don't understand why you could go for this in the first place, because what we're doing here is we're extending a tax cut from Social Security. So we're basically defunding Social Security by 2% and still paying out the same amount of money to people who are getting Social Security benefits. So, how is this ultimately good for the country?
Well, look, Democrats had a way to pay for this tax cut. President Bush, my good friend, who I really love as a person, cut taxes and added over $3 trillion of unfunded deficit and never paid for that tax cut. So the Democrats have gone along with pay-as-you-go, which is a conservative principle, and their method was to add 3% to people who earn over $1 million a year to pay for the tax cut that is a temporary tax cut. So it's only a 2% tax cut that is really funding Social Security.
Right.
That's forever. So they were willing to pay for it. It's just not. It's a difference between how do you pay for it. Republicans were supposed to pay for it by freezing federal salaries. These are middle-class people, federal workers. And there's a choice between funding it by taxing the wealthy or funding it by hitting people who are in the middle class. And that's a great frame for Democrats.
Well, there's a difference between taxing the rich and freezing pay on federal workers. I mean, how many people in the private sector?
Federal worker, there is a big difference. You're right. In one case, a federal worker who's in the middle class and has a tough time nowadays in the middle class versus millionaires who can afford a few $1,000s.
My guess is if you've been a federal worker for the last 5 years, you've gotten significant raises over the last few years. What I'm saying is people in the private sector have not seen those raises, and many of them have lost jobs or lost salary. I doubt that there are any federal workers who have actually lost salary in the last 5 years. Have there been pay cuts at that level? I don't think so.
But think about really, you will agree with me that relative pain, somebody who's bringing home $1 million a year in income can afford a 3% little bit of pain as compared to people who are in the $50,000 to $120,000 a year bracket. That's who federal workers are, and that's pretty well defined now as the middle class. Even $100,000 a year is defined as people who have kids in college or paying taxes, are not doing as well as certainly they would like to be able to do, and many of them are unemployed.
All right, we'll leave it there.
Federal workers and government workers are the people who have been hit by unemployment more than the private